So thank you to Danielle and Honey. But I have to say, I have kind of a problem with the word deepfakes. It's kind of negative. And in particular, and I respect it, and we'll talk about why deepfakes are problematic, but it leads the witness. It has the word fake built into it. And in fact, what I want to say today is that if you think about this technology more generally, there's actually, as Hani suggested, there's actually a lot of positive value you can get from these different kinds of technologies. And mostly what I want to do today is give you a little bit of context about where this stuff comes from and where I think it's going and why there's a lot to know. So in particular, I want to start with this picture of the self-portrait of Van Gogh, which looks just like the one he did in 1889, but it was actually done in 2007 by a well-known forger. So these problems have been around with us for a long time. There are actually laws on the books from 80 BC about forging real estate documents. Yeah, it's been a problem for that long. And you probably remember your history. Soviet government was famous for removing people like Leon Trotsky. This is pre-Photoshop, right? This is with dodging and burning and doing stuff like that. So this has been an issue, and closer to our own time, we've seen people in the press remove unattractive fence posts from well-known photographs. So this is kind of something that happens all the time. What are we going to do about it? How do we think about this problem of alternative views through the photographic process? So, as Hani suggested, you know, there are lots of websites out there. You can go pick up 100,000 faces. And I appreciated the ones that he showed because they were really nice. They're really elegant and beautiful. But if you actually go to that website and look at all 100,000, you'll find they have some problems. That guy has a real problem with his forehead. And that is actually a misgenerated person. And of course, you knew what was going to happen next. Automatically generated internet cats. And the same problems adhere. Those are cats that are problematic. But you know the technology is going to get better, right? So I want to position the whole idea about deepfakes not necessarily as this sort of, completely false thing, but it's an interesting idea that we're entering a new era of fakery, of more than just video, more than just photographs. So deepfakes are in fact a special subtype of what I would call algorithmically guided synthetic media. What I mean by that fancy phrase is media of all kinds, algorithms of all kinds, guidance of all kinds. Hani showed you several different ways to create a deepfake video. There will be more, right? But we can also think about creating deepfake audio, perhaps people, perhaps, right? So one thing to think about is how do you apply your AI technology to the creation of new kinds of content, new kinds of visions, new kinds of art? So this is an example of a set of different algorithmically altered artworks. So in the upper left, you see actually a photograph that's been run through a filter, which is guided by algorithms, by AI, basically mechanisms that take that image and tamper with it. Not to stitch it onto another body of a human being, but actually to create a kind of artistic expression. I can take a photograph and easily generate any of these images. I have no clue how I would actually draw, for example, the beautiful sort of impressionistic waves in the lower right. So the way this process works is you start with an image, you drop it into this editing program, think of advanced Photoshop or something, and say, let's apply the Van Gogh style. You can apply the Picasso style. You can apply that. You see where this is going? We can now start to create images like Starry Night by running a simple program. Now, lest you think this is only visual, I want to give you an example of something that ran as a Google Doodle a while ago, where you could actually input a melody. And so if you can, in this case, I'm editing the melody, and I hit play, you can hear the melody I input. Now, there's a machine-learned model from a bunch of Bach chorales. And if you hit the harmonize button, it will automatically harmonize it in the style of Bach. So that's not the sound, that's just thinking. So now, listen. This is 4-part harmony where I didn't write 3 of the 4 parts, but it's following the guidance of the model that was created by the Bach chorales. So it's extending my ability to write music with the genius of Bach, right? So this goes on, and you can imagine, better versions of this. But now start to think, what does it mean to take an intelligent process and apply it to things that you're part creator of? So we just saw the application of that for music creation. Remember colorized movies? I know you remember them, right? What about colorizing still photographs? Is that a deep fake? It's definitely an altered reality. We can take some of these more advanced algorithms, and you've probably seen the combined Jennifer Lawrence, Steve Buscemi imagery, right? So these are 2 well-known personalities, and you can combine them using the techniques, and you get this odd person. And in particular, if you watch the video,
I just this was very truly surprising for me.
Yeah, it's very surprising to me too. But what are we going to do about it? One thing one can do is to be skeptical of things you see. That's thing 1. Thing 2 is I can grab a frame from that video. You know how to grab a frame, right? Okay? You grab a frame from the video and you drop it in a Google reverse image search, and it will find you the video, the source video. So in essence, you can track back the provenance of that. Now you can imagine where we can go with this in the future. Being able to take, for example, background imagery and say, that background imagery appeared uniquely in this video, and you can start to see where the components come from. This is sort of the way we're heading with this. So we're actively interested, we, Google, are actively interested in supporting the work on recognition for these deepfake videos that you see. And so we just announced a collection of over 3,000 gold standard labeled deepfake videos. Now, these are not for you to use in your classes. These are for people to build their reco models, their image recognition, their video recognition model, so that they can properly identify fake videos. Okay? So I want you to think about that, because what we're trying to do is make the world better for this, right? So you can recognize these things. But also now think about algorithmically synthesized conversations. What would that be like? What does it even mean? So at Google, we've invented this thing called duplex. And what duplex allows you to do is to set up a conversation. There's an intelligent agent running on the back end. And it basically will enter into a conversation with you, a human. Now, in our implementation, we preface these conversations with, hello, I'm the Google AI duplex bot. And then the conversation proceeds. But this is what one of those conversations sounds like. The voice on the left is the synthetic bot, and the voice on the right is the person. Telephone call.
So how can I help you?
Human?
Hi, I'm calling to book a women's haircut for a client. I'm looking for something on May 3rd. Sure, give me 1 second. Sure, what time are you looking for around? At 12 p.m. We do not have a 12 p.m. available. The closest we have to that is a 1:15. Do you have anything between 10 a.m. and 12 p.m.?
This goes on and on and on. You get the idea. So there's interesting disfluencies. You get this person, the synthetic voice saying, all those little interjections that are in natural speech, and so it feels normal. And so we know this works pretty well. We use it actually, we make a few 100,000 phone calls like this in order to get information to support Street View and Google data sets. Now, you know Photoshop has always been this incredible tool for modifying photographs. That's what it's built for. Recently, they provided the capability to do what's called context-aware autofill. So here's a picture somewhere in California, and with a small amount of editing, you can make those chairs go away. Okay? If you haven't seen this before, it's important. But Now there's more. That's a still image. Now, of course, what we can do is do that same thing with Adobe's After Effects to remove moving elements of the video. So there's an image of a woman walking on a beach, and what I'm going to show you is actually drawing, surrounding her with a mask, and then having the system substantially go through and replace the woman walking on the beach with other parts of the beach that will infill correctly. Okay? So we can get rid of Trotsky, and we can get rid of people walking through complex scenes, and we can do smart infill. The reason this is interesting, I think, from our perspective, is that that capability, that ability to take complex images and match it to the background and map it onto complex surfaces is phenomenal. This is a picture of downtown Manhattan. This is a synthetic picture of downtown Manhattan. What is actually going on here is this is composed from actually thousands of different photographs taken from aerial imagery, and then wrapped around the CAD model of the underlying architecture. So there was no camera that took that picture. That's a synthesized picture. And here's a picture of a theoretical plane flying over the top of Yosemite. This is just Google Maps. But these images are synthesized from multiple perspectives. And the way you do that is you take a picture like the one on the left, you have a CAD model, that is a volumetric model of the buildings in place, and you basically, using like the techniques Hanny showed you about wrapping the face onto the body of another person, we can wrap imagery from reality on top of models. So we have it, and we can put all that together. I want to show you a little clip from a movie showing how Google VR Earth works. Because this image here, she's going to put on the headset, everything she sees that you see is synthesized by this technique. So this is a deep fake of reality. You cannot get that close to the Duomo. That's not allowed. You can't fly to that position over Hoover Dam. So you can see what we were doing is by taking these smart methods and all this richness of imagery we've got and combining it to create a kind of transformed vision of the world. They don't let you do that in Golden Gate Bridge either. So with these models, we can not only visit other places, but other times. We can change the position of the sun in the sky and see where the shadows fall. And so it opens up really, literally, a new way of thinking, a new way of seeing the world. So it opens an interesting question. What's real? If you look, for example, at Saturn, you might see this image. Well, not really. This is a computer-generated image of Saturn. You might think you would see something like this, but this is a color-accentuated version of Saturn. If you were actually at Saturn, what you would really see is that, which is rather boring. The deep point here is that even images that we see, we take for real, may not actually reflect the reality, right? If I take my glasses off, you are very different. All of you look very strange. Oh, you're back. Interesting point. Which is the real view, that or that? So in Google Street View, you can go to this position somewhere in Arizona, and you cannot see that sky. Not just because of light pollution, air pollution, but because this is an image that's taken over a long exposure period and is really deeply processed. If you look at the night sky, you'll see the Horsehead Nebula, black and white, like that. That's what you would see. If you have a long exposure camera, you'll see that. If you then process the image, you can see that. These are all real. They are different views of reality. So I want to leave you with a couple ways to think about this. We want to be smarter about deepfakes. We as a culture, and I think all three of us agree, we, mean you, mean me, need to understand how we can start to detect this. What are some heuristics? So here's one. As Danielle mentioned, if a deepfake salacious video comes out at a really bad time, be skeptical, right? She's right. You cannot sort of unsee the video. It affects you viscerally. And yet, you need to be aware that people are bad actors out there. And if you see something right before a seminal point in time, be aware. Think about what that means. In particular, if you have a big response to something, that's another clue. Ah, I should think about this carefully. Was this image designed or intended to cause this response? And learn how to do basic search. So one of the things I always tell my students is, you know, doing one more search costs you nothing. Maybe 3, maybe 4 seconds. But the value by getting a second perspective, another interpretation, another piece of data is immense. Take the time. So I think it's all for us to learn these critical media skills. I know we think we've been teaching them for a long time, but we also think we've been teaching civics for a long time. That hasn't worked out, has it? So we need to be conscious about this and actually become proactive in making our world a different place by helping our students, by helping our elders, by helping all of us. So the point here is I think with great power comes enormous responsibility, and the goal of journalism and science and education is really to help our students and our citizens and ourselves understand what is it we see? What is the story behind the vision? What is the story behind the photograph you're seeing? We've learned through hard lessons sometimes that a 360 perspective is great, but it's not additional context. Context is story. Context is reporting. Context is understanding. We need to have those skills. So if anything at all, all this technology ups the ante, and the possible consequences and downsides. Media understanding has always been important, but now it's like really important. We live in an age where everything can be shopped or deep-faked. It also means that any image you see might be artificial, might be synthesized reality or virtual reality, and sometimes we need to be critical of plain old reality. Thank you very much.